Hey tubers, welcome back. My wife says I look like a homeless person. What do you guys think? Anyway, I figured I would try something and see what you guys think about it. Here in New York, this is Regents Week, midterm Regents Week, and because my wife teaches piano, we're kind of a part of the school year because some of her upper level kids, her high school kids, have regents to take. So I've been thinking about that. Then I was thinking back to a story 45 years ago. I was a freshman in high school, and we all had Regents Week back then, obviously. So we all got up and went to our morning Regents, which was over at about 10:30. You were allowed to leave when you finished the test, but typically Regents were 2 hours long. Well, there was a morning bus that would get you to school somewhere around 7:30-ish. And then there was a lunchtime bus that would drop off the kids that took the morning Regents and bring back kids who had to take the afternoon Regents. Anyway, so we all went in, we all had a morning Regents, me and my peer group, and then it was time. We didn't want to hang around in school, so we hitchhiked home. Now, I grew up in Orange County, New York, so hitchhiking home back, we're talking the 1973 time frame, give or take a little bit. Well, actually, we're talking January of 1973. There's no give or take. So we hitchhiked home, and we had this adventure plan. We stowed our gear. We pick up our gear, and we hike off to Bull's mine. B-U-L-L. Bull was the person who worked it, and Bull's is in possession of the mine. Bull's mine. It was an iron ore mine that is in South Blooming Grove, New York, kind of out toward Chester. We didn't live too far from it. It was a couple of miles from our homes. But we grab our stowed gear and we go down Bull's mine. Remember, back then, 45 years ago, there was no internet. So the way everybody knew about things, you got from peer groups. And the older kids would talk about going down Bull's mine, and the bats that were down there, and the graffiti on the walls, and the big round room, and all that kind of stuff. So we get together, a whole lot of us. We've never been there. None of us had ever gone down there. We just had all the rumors and so forth. So we start on our way. It was frigid cold, but we get there, and as we're going down into the mine, it felt a little bit warmer. There was no ice as you worked your way down to the bottom. So Bull's mine, the part of it we went to basically had three shafts. One of them was collapsed, so you couldn't do anything with it. One of them was perfectly vertical. And thinking back to it, that's probably how they got the ore out of the mine. They probably had some kind of bucket situation, and as they mined the ore, it would get over to the vertical shaft, and they'd use donkeys or a steam engine or whatever else to haul the ore out of there. The mine closed at the end of the 1800s, 1893, give or take a little bit. And it was a West Point graduate who actually did all the mining. He was a mining engineer from West Point. So obviously we couldn't go down the vertical shaft because, we were young and strong, but we didn't bounce. So we went down it was about a 45-degree angle shaft. It was very, very steep. So we went down that shaft. We got to the bottom. And what we discovered down there was a big round room with all the graffiti that they talked about. It was fairly flat. Off to the left, as you were going down the shaft, you got to the bottom. Kind of off to the left of the big round room was a shaft that led off toward the north. right? And then there was some kind of other areas where they kind of did some mining that you were able to climb around on. But what I think back to was the idea that our parents, and there was, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us, who had no idea what we were up to. We just kind of disappeared. And, we obviously came home at supper time because we would have been in a whole heap of trouble, all of us, if we were not home in time for dinner. I also think about, should we have not come home, what would our parents have done? I'm trying to recall back exactly how we got there. I remember hitchhiking, but I think a friend of ours brought us up onto Route 208 just outside of Washingtonville and dropped us off there on his way somewhere else. And that's where we hitchhiked from. So if they ever tracked him down, he might have been a source of some kind of information to what we were up to. But if they didn't track him down, we more or less went to the Regents and disappeared. Where'd they go? If they didn't track him down, Bowles Mine to Washingtonville, probably about 9 miles, give or take a little bit, give or take a mile. So we were really pretty far off course. And unfortunately, if the thing fell in on us, how would they have ever figured out we were down there? It's not like we left stuff up on top, right? What's also interesting about this story is I ended up at work. I ran across a bunch of other people, guys, who also had all the same kind of bull mine adventures with bull mine. Perhaps they lived in Monroe or Chester or New Windsor, and they traveled their way to get to Bull Mine. So there's the Bull Mine story, and you could look up Bull Mine and see somebody went through the trouble of going down there and getting all the shooting all kinds of photos and all. So picture, that's what we were doing when we were 14 years old on our way to 15. I mentioned that northern shaft. We talked to some people who had been down there years before us, probably 10, 15 years before we went down there. And they said that shaft was not flooded with water at that point. And that there were actually tracks and a cart and some other stuff down there. There was too much water in there to see to the bottom to see if there were, rail tracks for pushing carts or whatever. But what's interesting, if you go north from there, as the crow flies, maybe 1.5 miles, there's another mountain, and there is a vertical shaft there. Same kind of roads led up to the shaft. I mean, they were obviously overgrown quite a bit, but you could kind of see the same kind of gentle inclines, which you would kind of need to use if you were hauling ore with a wagon and a horse. Anyway, there was this vertical shaft. We had no idea how far it went because over the 75 years since we found that one, debris had fallen in there, trees and junk like that. It was quite a ways off in the middle of nowhere, so nobody threw anything in there because you would have to carry a car up there and drop it in, right? Or a motorcycle up there and drop it in. Why would you do that, right? It was quite a distance. But we were always curious if those two shafts actually connected, that if they actually did all that mining and then used that vertical shaft to take stuff up on the other place. Anyway, if anybody gets bored, you could go look Bowles Mine up. It's in South Blooming Grove, New York, not far from Chester, not far from Monroe, 9 miles out of Washingtonville. I think it's still there. I think if you're walking around not paying attention or doing silly things on a motorcycle or whatever, you can still fall right down that vertical shaft and fall the 50 feet or so to your demise. I think the somewhat horizontal, that 45-degree shaft is still there. So I think the adventure still exists. I'm not, I don't know who would block it off. I don't know who owns that property. I'm not quite sure why somebody would have an interest to do that. Other than, once again, safety purposes. Anyhow, if anybody did anything cool like this when they were young, please tell the story. It makes it interesting. It just seems that that nowadays a lot of the young folks don't get to experience such adventures. For any of the young folks listening to this video, do take it as a cautionary tale, because once again, if something happened to us, chances are by the time they, found the kid that gave us the ride up to 208, and if we said anything about where we were going or what we were up to or him, that I don't recall. But it might have taken him quite a while to figure out that we were down in Bull's mind and that we were in trouble. So before anybody gets involved in these adventures, perhaps leave a note under your pillow, or tell a few people, or better yet, try not to put yourself in a situation where you could be in harm's way. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching and commenting and subscribing. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you didn't, please let me know why. Take care now, folks. Bye.